Thank you, Pastor Talib, and for having the foresight and the vision for including this information that I think churches and nonprofits sorely need. Like you said, the previous workshops I think went very well, and I recommend everyone take a look at them. I had a church that contacted me and said that they had looked at it and wanted me to come and help them. I suggested they actually even look at the succession planning one as well, because board development and succession planning go hand in hand. So I just want to first ask, does everyone see the screen and slide only? Chris, Debbie, are you
great?
Okay, great. Just want to make sure you're seeing what you should see. So as Pastor Talib said, I'm introducing myself. He's introduced me, thank you. And the only thing I wanted to add is that I just got a master's in organizational leadership that I think is being very helpful in my being able to communicate with you, and also in running the nonprofit that I run, Hands for Hope LA. I'm a wife and a mother of wife of a musician and a mother of 2 adult children, a preacher, and who's a sound engineer and a preschool teacher. No grandchildren yet, but I have the education that Pastor Talib mentioned, and I'm treasurer of ABCOFLASH, as he mentioned. I attend First Baptist Church of North Hollywood. Our pastor's been very supportive and attended most of these events, so I appreciate him and our church members for joining us. We've had many wonderful events, including a retreat where we had a great time, and revivals and concerts for kids and everyone. So I think that I have some experience to bring to the forefront today. I'm a former senior financial analyst and a CEO of this nonprofit called Hands for Hope, which is a free after school program, and it's located in North Hollywood for the past 22 years. And we've had 2 to 3 events each year for all 22 years, from lavish galas in Beverly Hills to an event in the park with the kids, to showcases at local theaters, to a concert where we honored Bill Withers. And coming up, we're going to be having, workshops for parents and things like that. So we've done events quite a bit, and I've attended and participated in other events for ABCOFLASH and others. So, as CEO and founder of the nonprofit management consulting firm, Simple Data Nonprofit Consulting, we like to guide, assist, serve, and support small to mid-sized nonprofits and churches. And this workshop is just one of the services that we offer. So if you need any type of service like this for your church, please contact me, and you'll have my contact information at the end. We, like Pastor Talib said, had 5 different workshops, and ABCOFLASH has graciously offered to sponsor those for all of you. So I hope you'll take advantage of them and go to the click. I think Debbie will let you know how to get those past workshops. And then this one will be available soon as well. And there's one more workshop, which is called Nonprofit Management. And that's going to be covering some of the topics that you've heard throughout the others. So if you've missed those before, you can catch up by attending that workshop, and you'll get some of that information. So, there's a poll that we do at the beginning of each of these workshops, and it's only because we need to know who we have in the room with us, who of you, what is your background, so that we're making sure to ask you to direct our information to those that are in the room. So if you could please take a moment, if you've been on our workshops before and you haven't done this, that's fine. If you've done it before, thank you for bearing with us, but it just helps me to know who do we have with us that I can gear our information to. So we have someone from a nonprofit who's asking the information about a nonprofit, then that's where my expertise lies, in the event management for nonprofits. But I'm gearing it to churches as well, because I do have some background in the churches. So everyone, we can end that poll. I think everyone is, we've gotten a few of you to fill it out. You still have a minute if anyone else wants to fill it out. Thank you for doing that. And you can go ahead and end the poll. And I think that you'll see the results tells us who's in here with you. And if you're not one of the church members or a nonprofit leader and you have another role that you'd like to let us know about, you can put that in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to share the results so everyone can see it. And it just tells you, oh, okay. So we got it. I got an error. I don't know. Does everyone see the results? of the poll?
Yep, they're being shared right now.
Great, okay. So you're doing it, so I don't have to. Okay, so we can see that we have quite a few church members, which is great. And those are the people that probably are at the forefront of creating events. So it's great to have you with us. And I'm going to move on to the next slide. So we really want today's workshop to be conversational, and I want to hear about your events. You know, it's helpful for us to hear what's been successful for others and what lessons you have learned. So I'm going to stop at the end of each slide and ask if any of you have any experiences you'd like to share, and you can give a brief recap. If I don't stop, feel free to interrupt me and ask a question or make a comment. We had an event yesterday at my nonprofit where we had a guest speaker who was doing a food demonstration. So when he arrived to do the demonstration, he said, "I'm going to make a salad." And it was like, okay. So I started asking him questions. Will we have time for that? Do you expect me to assist in any way? Am I expected to taste it on camera after you prepare it? I may not like it. I might make a face. I don't know. So he said, you know, it seems like you have issues. And I said, no, I just have questions. Inquiring minds want to know. So it's kind of how I operate. I ask questions. And I think these are the questions you should be asking yourself about events. So it's a way for me to cover all my bases. And even with doing that, there's times when we debrief afterwards that we've forgotten something. You should always debrief after your events to see if you would like to change anything, or, you know, if you should do the event again. If it wasn't successful, why would you do it again? So 22 years of galas and concerts, we've learned a lot over the years, and we've made many changes. And now we seem to have it down to a science, and we function like a well-oiled machine. No, you still have issues sometimes, but you know, we do try, and by debriefing and really looking at what's successful, we're able to figure out whether or not we should continue doing the event. So this workshop and the next one will be a series of questions that you should ask yourself about event planning or nonprofit management. Asking yourself these questions ahead of time and getting your answers will help you to make your event successful. Excuse me. So the first question: some events are labor intensive and do not achieve the desired goal. So the first question is, have you reviewed the purpose of your event with all the interested parties? So, you know, does the board know the event that's coming up? Do the people in leadership know what's coming up? Do the church members know what's coming up? Have you shared that? Have you discussed whether or not you should be doing this event with them? Have you discussed the goals for the event? You know, there's all types of goals, whether it's raising funds, whether you want to just get the members active and busy and doing things, whether you want to have a church family gathering just for bonding with your church members, a revival, which kind of reinvigorates your community, a community outreach where you're reaching out to the community, the revival reinvigorates your congregation. And then you might want to have a community outreach where you reach out to the people in your community. Our church just had one where we had 100 people from the community just come out for an Easter egg hunt, but it's a way to expose them to your church. So you may want to do an event like that. You might want to have Women's Day or something to really showcase the women in your church and the work that they do. So there's all types of reasons for having an event, but whatever your purpose is, you can turn it into a fundraiser if you like, or you can just have that purpose, and then you will measure your success by whether or not that purpose was fulfilled. So what would make it successful? Did you raise what you planned to raise fund-wise? Did you have full participation by your congregation? Did they each take it personally and reach out to their family members and invite other people? Did you cover the costs of the event? Those are questions you may want to ask yourself, you know, whether or not your event was successful. And, you know, we've decided that we may eliminate one of our 3 events this year. They require so much work by the staff and the volunteers. Is it worth the funds we raise? Could we have gotten that same amount from requesting a grant from somewhere? But sometimes grants are not guaranteed. You could request a lot of grants and not get any of them. So you really need to determine whether or not you need to do an event to raise funds or whether or not you're going to do it another way. you know, and if you do an event right, you should be able to make what you plan. And that's just something to consider. So are you tracking the time that your staff spends to make the event a success? Are you paying overtime related to the preparation that they have to do? Are you hiring additional staff? Or do you have enough volunteers? Setup and cleanup are the areas where you may not have adequate volunteers, and you need staff to do that. Are they prepared to do that? So that's the labor intensive part of it. Thinking about all of that when you're doing an event, taking that into consideration beforehand, as opposed to the day of, do we have someone, everyone's left and there's all of this cleanup to do. You have to really be thinking about that when you're preparing your event. So you're asking yourself that question, why? Why are we doing this? Is this going to give us the desired result? Okay, we have another poll coming up for you here. Let's see what types of events you've had over the years, and feel free to jump in and go off mute and ask a question if you like. But this poll is just telling me what types of things you've done. Oops, sorry about that. Over the years. So I want to hear about your events a little bit. If you choose what types you've had, or just other, there's a lot of other there then. So perhaps, maybe you have completely different types of events, and I'd like to know what those are. You can put it in the chat, or you can go off mute and tell us about it. You've had concerts, you've had community outreach, you've had revivals, you've had Women's Day. Some of you have had all of them. This is great. Hopefully you don't see my speaker notes. If you do, I will fix that right now. There we go. Okay, so we can end that poll. You can get a sense of what others are doing and share the results for everyone to see. That there have been concerts and revivals and community outreach and Women's Day and all of the above. I hope everyone is putting in the chat, if they had what types of other events did you have? Okay, you can type it into the chat, or you can unmute and let us know. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your events if you'd like. Like I said, with the nonprofit that we've founded, I've had 2 to 3 every year, some really successful, some marginally successful, all successful due to the amount of friends we accumulated over the year who are loyal and who come back and who know what we do. So we're going to stop sharing the poll. And let's look in the chat and just see what types people have had. A jazz concert and comedy night. Comedy is big. People love to laugh. They need to laugh. You've had church anniversaries, youth gatherings, definitely. The youth is the future of the church, so we need to do a lot more of those. Annual meetings, retreats. So there's all kinds of events that you can do, not necessarily fundraisers, but they can be beneficial. If you want to turn them into fundraisers, you can do that. Okay, so we're going to move on. We're going to close the poll. And so we're going to ask the question of who. Is there committee members that are responsible for the event? So are there members who are overwhelmed with other responsibilities, but you're asking them to do these events as well? Can you assign or select or ask for volunteers to lead other volunteers? You have to have a leader of a committee if you have a committee. Let's say your worship arts committee wants to host a concert or a revival. Who's managing the outreach? Who is managing the decorations? Who is responsible for the collection of funds? Are there performers? Who is contacting them and making sure that they are on time? Who is doing sound? Who is doing setup and cleanup? Do you need to purchase decorations, or do you store from year to year? We use the same tablecloths and wash them, and we use the same vases on the tables every year. And our volunteers would go downtown and buy fresh flowers, but it'd be the same vases and the same tablecloths, and that worked. We were able to do that. So, you can save funds that way. And we kept our costs very low doing that, right? So you want to think about who is doing the work. because there is work involved with every event. And to just create an event without taking that into consideration, you will end up where some members may be burnt out because they're having to do too much. So who will do it? Where are you going to do it? So, is your church the best location for the amount of people who will attend? Where will they park? Have you thought about that? We had an event at the Harmony Gold Theater on Sunset in LA. And we moved from doing the event at the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, which is huge and has great parking and a great location. So everybody who'd been coming to our event for 12, 15 years was expecting the same type of venue. But the venue that we had, there was no parking on Sunset, and it rained. The people had to find parking blocks away and walk. They vowed they would never come back to our event once we held it at that location. And we lost faithful members that came to our concerts every year because we didn't take that into consideration. We thought there would be enough. We thought we might have a valet parking set up, and then we didn't do it. So are you thinking about that when you decide where you're going to host your event? Is this the best time of year? We're going to talk about the when part in a minute. So, but certain times of year, it's better to park. Certain times of year, it's there's no parking available. So are you thinking about all of that? Is the room big enough? Is there adequate ventilation? We had an event at my home, and we have 3 bathrooms, and the plumbing went out on all 3. Murphy's Law, things, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And we had to stop the party and call a plumber. Things happen. So you have to be prepared for those things by thinking in advance. And that's not something we could have planned for, but you do want to know that your air conditioning works, that there's adequate ventilation, that there's enough seating. That was another issue we had. We didn't have enough chairs in the reception area because we wanted people to stand and mingle. But there are some people who cannot stand. Are you accommodating them? Are you accommodating handicapped people? Have you thought of all of that? Is the sound adequate? Can people hear? Can they see? If you have a presentation or a performer, can they see from where they're seated? At my son's wedding, we had to set up outdoor seating because there were too many people. And then I wondered, could those people hear? Could those people see? But everyone was in a good mood and happy for the occasion, so it worked out. But you don't want any disgruntled participants to be at your event. You want them to have a good time. That's the whole point, that everybody enjoys themselves or gets what you're trying to have them get from the event, and that they continue to participate in the future. So should your event be in person in the current climate? That's something to think about, right? And I want to formally introduce someone to you who's helping on all of these workshops with me. His name is Chris Peterson. He's joined our board of directors, but his background and his expertise and his business is called Digital Project Masters. And he's the CEO of that company. And he's our go-to guru for all things virtual and digital. And he's going to tell you a little bit about the successes and challenges that he's faced hosting virtual events over the past couple of years during the pandemic and before. So Chris, you're up.
Thank you, Miss Lydia. Hello, everybody. So many of us have met in the chat already, and it's great to be able to kind of address you face to face after all this time. But yeah, my company, Digital Project Masters, we do all kinds of anything online, right? Our official statement is we help nonprofits, small businesses, and early stage startups grow their digital revenue, right? And one of the most important aspects for nonprofits, right, is events. And this was something that obviously escalated throughout the pandemic. And that was actually how Miss Lydia and I had initially met. We met through I think it was Pat Prescott. Was it, Miss Lydia? Was that who introduced us?
I know that you and the 3 of us were together early on. I'm not certain. I think someone from another charity recommended you to me.
Yeah. Pat was their host, and she also hosted the annual jazz concert. So Pastor Talib, I saw you there. we're on the same page with jazz concerts. But yeah, so we met early on in the pandemic, and it happened to be the jazz concert for Hands for Hope LA, that they wanted to make sure that after, I think it was 17 years at the time, that it was still being presented to their community as it was annually. And it's interesting, right? I like to point out, whenever you're doing anything virtual or any event, you want to consider the overall structure, right? And really consider, why would I move it virtual? So what we've found is that for pretty simple events, right? Whenever you do them in person, you can put a lot of money into production. Okay, so whether that's food or drinks or venues, volunteers, whatever, caterers, right? You're pumping money in that ultimately could be saved. And what we typically see is that with a much lower overhead, right? A lot of the times you're not reaching for that same fundraising goal, but what we found is that folks give because they want to, right? And ultimately it's about giving them a reason to give. And I think that's really important to make sure you're considering whenever you're doing any type of fundraising, not just events, not just, auctions, whatever the case may be. Folks are connecting with you. So if this is your church, right, your congregations understand that there's a purpose to this fundraising, right? And ultimately it's giving them a reason to give, to donate. Adding production value is just a benefit, and it gives them something to look forward to and to continue coming back. One thing that once we start talking about virtual is, right, considering the long-term effects of your event, and what are some of the things that you're ultimately looking to get out of it. And I always make sure, when you talk about in-person events, a lot of the time it's selling tickets, or if you're at a church, right, it's just inviting your congregation to show up. There's no official registration procedure. So I always say, anything online, you want to pick a lane and stick to it. And what we typically find is you're either selling tickets or you're requiring registrations with a request to donate, right? And Miss Lydia, we've done it both way for Hands for Hope and Food for the Soul, which we did last night. We did ticket sales, and I think our last Starlight Jazz, we did registration with request for donations. I think you just need to figure out, what is your target audience there, right? Who is it that you want to show up? But what's really important is making sure that either way you're capturing as much information as possible, and most specifically email addresses. Okay, and this is just the most important, I think, piece of advice that I could give, is that anything that you're doing, you can create a Zoom link and say, hey, show up, we're having this event at 7 p.m. on Sunday, please donate, right? But if you haven't enabled a registration process for that event, you're missing out on valuable information for folks who may be coming from outside of your organization. Because once you have that email address and you begin to build your own email list, right? And now we're getting a little bit more into digital marketing, but it's very important for small businesses, early stage startups, nonprofits, churches to consider, is when you capture that information, you can continue to market to them, right? And make sure that you have a good process in place for a newsletter or continued communication with your congregation or with, the folks that you're trying to engage. And the reason I say that is on a very important note, is that fundraising for an event does not stop at that event, right? So it doesn't start at the launch. You should be continuously, if you have a committee, they should be continuously seeking sponsors and donors throughout the year, to prep for the event. Once you launch that, you want to make sure that you're doing that push throughout. But after the event, right, provide a carrot, something that is going to keep those folks coming back, right? So for example, if you're doing, even if this applies to in-person as well, and I think it's a lot of the time overlooked, if you're doing something in person at your church, like a church family showcase, right? Think of something creative that could be done at the event and then auctioned off afterwards, right? So you're giving a reason once again a week later for those donors to re-engage, okay? And a lot of the time, right, that re-engagement, they've forgotten what they've spent a week ago or 2 weeks ago, right? And it's just human nature to be willing to look at something and say, oh yes, I could give again, even if it's a lot less than the first time. So I do think that that's very important. Specifically on virtual, and I'll wrap it up for you, Ms. Lydia, because I get a little long-winded, I'm sorry.
It's okay, you have a lot of background in events.
Specifically for virtual, the most important thing is preparation is key, right? And I'm not going to share my screen because I don't want to take Miss Lydia's screen share off, but it's going to kind of pop on my virtual background, so I'll hold it back here. This whole kind of sheet that I have here is basically an entire run of show for what we did last night. And it was a minute by minute breakdown of what's supposed to happen when, right? And I think a lot of the time with virtual events, if you're not familiar with the production portion, it's very easy to think, okay, we're going to go into this, it's going to flow smoothly. I might spotlight somebody here, I might share a screen here. But if you don't have everybody who's a part of that production on the same page, big problems can happen. Additionally, I would make sure that you have a backup plan at all times and have that mapped on your run of show or whatever document you've created to make sure things go smoothly. So for example, always have a co-host. So if your internet goes out as the host or your power goes out, that doesn't just close the meeting out. It'll transfer ownership to the co-host who's on, right? So you don't have 100 people online, it drops off, and then, you know, you've basically lost your opportunity. And have a run through is my last piece of digital advice. Big digital advice is any event, anything that you do, make sure that you're meeting with key stakeholders, anybody who's involved, at least one time before the event. I really suggest a minimum of twice. If you have a host, meet with that host, go through the run of show them how the screen sharing works and what it looks like when they're spotlit and something changes and you move to the next portion of a show. If you have live participants, meet with them the day before the event and make sure they understand their setup, their audio is clear, their internet speed is high enough. Because once you get, 70, 80, 90 people onto a Zoom event, whether it's a webinar or a meeting, it's taking up a lot of bandwidth, right? And that's something that is easily forgotten. So all of a sudden, you have somebody presenting and they're freezing and it's very glitchy and it doesn't sound good. So you want to take all of those things into consideration in the days leading up. So I see Sharon real quick. I want to point out Sharon's comment that you've found that people give false info on the registration form because they don't want to be contacted later. It's going to happen. All I can tell you is keep your email lists as clean as possible, right? So when you get those bounce back notifications, whether you're using Constant Contact or MailChimp, to make sure you clean them up. What a lot of folks don't know is that if you're sending to bad emails, it affects your sender score, okay? And that's literally a score that your providers, so like Gmail, for example, is going to notice if somebody's a typical spam emailer. And that's why emails go directly to spam, because they have a low sender score. So you want to make sure to keep that email list clean. It's inevitable. Folks are going to give you bad info. But if you don't have somebody doing that for your church or your organization now, go in, clean up your email list, and whatever service you're using to send will show you which emails are bouncing back. Definitely delete those. Otherwise, the folks who are looking forward to hearing from you might not be getting your emails. They might be going to spam simply because you haven't cleaned up your email list. So that's outside of events, but that's just a little nugget, I guess.
No, that is actually great. You answered her question. I was going to also mention about that, Sharon, is that you could put some type of a thing in your communication to them saying, would you like to be contacted later? And if they don't check that, then you honor that and do not contact them again. And then they'd be more inclined to give you their real email address, which you know, then wouldn't use unless you really needed to. And they need to trust you. I think that's what will build trust, is if they ask you not to contact them, don't.
I do see your note there. When I go off screen sharing, I'll double check the name of it. But yes, you can get your sender score. There are free applications for it. So I'll look that up and I'll shoot it over to you.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about the market, the social media and contacting people. So thank you, Chris. Chris has a lot of information, and he's like a person that really gives me security when we have our events, just like even these events of these classes. Last class, we had technical difficulties where my computer wouldn't come on. And then today I had technical difficulties where one computer, the mouse wasn't working. So it started popping up on the screen and had to change to a different computer. So having him there really gives me a sense of security. It's a good idea to have a person that's technical like that, that can help you with your events if you're going to do virtual events. So like he said, we did an event yesterday called Food for the Soul last night. It was about food. We had a couple of live food demonstrations. We also had some video of activities that we do at Hands for Hope, and we're going to show you one of those at the end. And then so that was 2 events actually we had this week. One event on Monday, which was not virtual, it was in person, which was program related. And the goal wasn't fundraising for that one. The goal was to do things for the parents and have the parents come out. And we had full participation with all of our parents. So that we feel that one was successful. The one last night, our goal was to raise funds. 34,000 was what we hoped to raise. We raised 22,000 so far. But like Chris said, it's not over. Those people
we'll get it. We'll hit 34.
Thank you. That encourage them to continue to give, and they'll maybe tell a friend about it. And so I've seen a couple of donations come in this morning. So people are still thinking about us, and they enjoyed the event, and they're wanting to still support the organization. So church members sometimes don't get to it right that night, right at the event, but they might later on say, I want to give something to the church because that was a great event. I had a good time. So, you know, this whole category was where, if you do it virtually, Chris gave you some nuggets about that. And we talked about where having parking and things like that in place, and thinking of all these things ahead of time for in-person or virtual will help your event be successful. So moving on to when. So around Christmas and Easter time, churches are flooded with events. And sometimes we might want to go to another church and participate in an event that they have. It is so much that we're asking of people during those seasons that you have to really think about whether or not you want to have your event during that time. And if you do, try not to compete with too many other things. You can actually see what's going on around that time. You can take a look at other churches' calendars or, you know, local events that are taking place, and see that your event, that you're choosing a date that's not too much of a conflict for people, because then you're asking them to make a choice between you and perhaps things they want to do with their family, or, you know, spend quality time with other people. So you want to make sure that your event is not a conflict for them. Do you have too many events? It's like, oh, they're having another event. You know, I just went to one, you know, so I think it's a good idea for your church board to plan out maybe no more than 3 or key events throughout the year, because if you're continually having events, then people get overtaxed, and it's a little bit too much for them to have to participate in, to volunteer and to attend, right? So you start having people drop off or not show up or whatever, and your events aren't as successful as they could be if you really planned out the timing of them, right? Is the cost of the event in conflict with tithing or holiday purchases? Around Christmas time, they're buying presents for people, things like that. So are they having to pay to come to your event as well? You want to be able to charge them. They want to come. They want to, you know, you may even have some church members who are participating because they're in the choir, they're singing, but you don't want them to have so many other things going on, or have so many other things requiring their financial participation that they just can't do it the way that you need them to. So, for a summer event, we talked about there being adequate air conditioning. If you're doing events in the summer, you're doing it outside. Is there too much sun? I think that our pastor, rightfully so, wanted to cut back on events. And, this is what I'm talking about right now, planning a certain amount of events per year and not asking too much of the people, and also not having them not tithe because they're taking money to participate in events. They're putting in money to make the event successful, or they're paying to attend, and now they're not tithing. Tithing is primary for church members. So really they should be doing that first. So you don't want them to have to compete. But you know what, though, there are people who just don't tithe, and they might pay to come to an event or two. So it's another way to get funds from those people. You want to have maybe 6 months lead time before your event to begin planning your event. You don't want to be planning events at the last minute, because you know what, it shows that this was kind of thrown together, as opposed to really giving some thought to the different things that you can do in an event. You want to create your budget. You want to book the location if you're going to have it at a different place than your church. Sometimes you can use other church have space, another church. They may have space that they will rent to you. I just found out that La Cañada Flint Ridge Church has gardens that they rent out, that you can have an event in their gardens. That's a beautiful venue to have, and your church members would enjoy it. It doesn't always have to be at your church. If you need to get permits, you need lead time. If you need to book speakers or guest speakers or performers or musicians or sound people, all of that needs to be done ahead of time, because they have calendars and schedules. So you want to make sure that they're not having a conflict on the day that you'd like to have your event. You want to design a marketing campaign that's spread out over the 6 months. So we're going to reach out to people at different times. You need to book travel maybe for performers that are coming in. You want a guest speaker who does not live locally and he has to travel. That's all things that you need to take into consideration. You want to schedule meetings with your volunteers, your committee members. You want to have a committee first and foremost. So if you had a worship arts committee, they may manage the event, or they may make a subcommittee that is really just focusing on that event that they're having, right? So if it's a revival, maybe it's a revival committee, or a retreat, it's a retreat committee that maybe the worship arts committee oversees, or something to that effect. But then there needs to be a leader of that committee who has volunteers that have said they will help, and try to have, I would say, no less than 3 volunteers for every committee that's doing an event, because everyone can't do everything. And then do you need to get approval from the congregation, from the board? You want to make sure that you have those things in place and done. So if you give yourself 6 months, there's less room for Murphy's Law and things going wrong. So we had an occasion at our church where 2 groups put in for an event on the same day. One group just assumed that they could have that date. The other had put in a written request that was approved. So we ended up having both on the same day, but one group was not happy about that. And we had conflicts with the parking, with the rooms that were used, with sharing the kitchen. So you want to really plan and make sure it's on the calendar, that the people and the interested parties all know that it's happening. And there's no need for conflict like that, because there's 365 days in a year. So you can manage that if you plan well. How? So how are you going to tell people about this event? We talked about letting everyone know. How are you doing that? So you may want to publicize on social media, or send out emails as a part of your marketing effort. We use Constant Contact, but there's also a software that Chris mentioned called MailChimp it's similar, and it was just purchased by QuickBooks. So if you use QuickBooks software, that MailChimp software is free to you to use. It's not as extensive as Constant Contact, I think, but it does a lot. And you can use it to track your email addresses. Where are you keeping them now? In a spreadsheet or in a list somewhere? If you have them inside of this software, you can do things like Chris mentioned, track your sender score. You can see who's opening your emails. If there's someone who's never opened your emails, this is not the best way to contact them, right? So we have to look at that. And we sometimes use direct mail. And I have some things listed here. We send a series of emails, you'll want to send an initial email making them aware of the event, and you can use Constant Contact or eBlast or regular email to do that. And then you want to schedule a series of emails afterwards, including maybe 2 the week of the event and 1 the day of, to remind them that whoever purchased tickets, those that purchase tickets, or to give people a last chance to purchase, right? So you can do Facebook and Instagram, and they have a feature where you can boost posts, so you can pay a little extra so that they boost it to more people. So your churches right now, nowadays, are always trying to get new members. So you don't want to only advertise within your current congregation. If you're doing an event that might be popular for other people, like we do a Mardi Gras, and I see that the person who handles that at our event, who's also volunteered many times for us, Veronica, is on the call today. But you want that Mardi Gras event. Other people love Mardi Gras. They may want to come. So you might want to do it on Facebook and Instagram and ask your members to share it and repost it. And you can pay extra to boost that post, right? So those are things that you can do. You can put ads in local publications. We place ads on there's neighborhood software, online software that we do, neighborhood groups. You can make announcements in church. You can put it on the church bulletin. ABCOFLASH does not do registrations for these classes so that its members can opt in or watch the recording later. You never know what works for people's schedules, so you want to give them every option to participate. And direct mail is another way to contact them. You may want to send postcards or invitations. Do you use bulk mail? I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but postcards, if you're sending more than 200 postcards or letters or invitations, you can get a bulk mail permit and pay a lot less in postage. So you may want to consider doing that to past members. Even though people have left, they may want to know that you're having an event. They may come back for it. So keep that list of addresses, keep that list of emails, as Chris mentioned, so that you have ways to contact these people. So, let me know if people are writing things in the chat, how much is too much in getting the word out. So
can you hear me?
I can hear you, Doug, and I see your comment, and I want to make sure that I'm answering things in the chat. So yes, how much?
Let me say that, like for this, I put out, I'm trying to figure if my thinking is right. At what point do you start annoying people where you keep sending, like, I sent the text about this yesterday, this morning, a Constant Contact, a Facebook, where people were like, stop bothering me. But I guess my theory is people miss a lot of it and you keep hitting them with it. Or is it just going to be different for every person?
You would want to make a schedule for yourself. I'm going to do 2 the week of and 1 the day of, and then stick to that, and people will get used to it. I have no issue with ignoring things that I choose not to. I know what you're contacting me about. I'm not looking at it. Or, oh yes, that's right, I forgot. I got busy.
And that's my thought. I'm reminding you because even I sent one this morning about this because I'm thinking, well, maybe it'll catch somebody this morning that never looked at it.
I think it may have. We have a few participants today. So I think that, some of them may have only seen it this morning. Maybe they were too busy during the week at work or whatever. So I don't think you're doing too many. Now, every day would probably be too much. So maybe a couple the week of, a couple the day of, or maybe 1 the day of and a couple the week of, I think is more than enough. And I think that's what we've been doing. And that seems to work. But I still get people who tell me, I didn't know you had an event. And I say to myself, are you kidding? Because we have sent so many things. So I don't think that you have to worry about that. I think you're fine to do it the way you're doing it. And, if you're a member of ABCOFLASH and you want to know what ABCOFLASH is doing, then you shouldn't have a problem with them reminding you.
Yeah.
Any other questions in the chat there that I missed, Chris? Let's see. See, someone is saying that they saw this email and they did it. They hurried to jump on board, Doug. So good job. And let's see. For each event, email, postcard. So Sharon, I think that, I don't think you want to use a different one for each event. You may want to use all of your methods. Because as I said, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I think I didn't say it right. So in other words, like one day we have a phone app, you can send push notification. Another day you could do it via one call, which is a phone call to everyone. Another day you could do an email, because some people don't even have our phone app. Some people don't read emails. You know, almost everyone sees a phone message. So rather than just doing like 3 push notifications on different days, push a notification one day, something else the next day. That's what I was trying to say.
You're exactly right. And you're saying what I said about, you know, that there are some people who never open the emails. So you want to figure out which way you're contacting them. But the key word here that I said before is scheduling. So in my schedule of things that I'm going to do to market this event, I have that I'm going to do 2 email blasts that week, and I'm going to do a postcard 2 weeks before that, and I'm going to maybe do a phone call if it's down to the wire and people haven't registered, you know. So there's all different things that you can do, and so you want to schedule them out and then do them on that schedule. Then you're not inundating people. Oh, we did the postcard and the email on the same day, so they're like, well, I just got this morning, why did I need to see the email this afternoon? So you want to spread those out so that you're contacting them at different periods. So scheduling is the key to that. Okay.
I have another question.
How
people are inundated with invitations to events and things. One of my questions is, how effective is snail mail? Like, because we as a region will put out a mailing thinking there's people that never see our texts, our emails, they're not connected in that way. But you know, how in today's current climate, snail mail, what's the evaluation of how effective or non-effective it is? Or is that a question that's too difficult to answer?
No, snail mail, direct mail, still necessary. Still have people who do not open the emails, as I said.
Yeah.
And then, you know, once you're using Constant Contact, you can see that there are people who never open your email.
Oh,
so
yeah.
How else are you going to contact them if not by direct mail or snail mail or a phone message or something to that effect? You have to know your audience and see what it is. If you have a population in your congregation that's over 50, 60, they may not be email people. They may not be they may be technologically challenged. So you may want to always send them a direct mail, and then you'll get to know who's responding to what. At Christmas time, we do a mailer where we send an envelope. And that envelope comes back with checks in it from people who didn't open our email and do an online payment. They sent a check. So we always still do that email, that mailer at the end of the year, and then try to do some other communication throughout the year so that we don't lose touch with those people who do not go online.
Could I add one thing here? And I think, Doug, this goes directly to your point. And I'm sorry to cut in, Ms. Lydia, but it's
okay.
It just kind of sparked to me. So the one thing that I would highly recommend in snail mail, the one thing that I've always disliked about snail mail, and this even goes back to my previous career, which I won't tell you what it was because you will all judge me. Miss Lydia knows. But I was in the car business actually, and that was something that I continuously argued with my owner about. And the reason why I didn't like it is because you can't track metrics, right? So I do think I agree with Miss Lydia, and I do think it's a requirement, but I would maybe send out one flyer with, you know, a couple of weeks leading up to the event. And then keep in mind that in regards to annoying folks, right? I think it's the ease of them being able to disregard it is something to take into consideration. So for like push notifications, as an example, they can very easily swipe up. Another very, very good one is ringless voicemail, right? To where you can send a recorded message, but their phone doesn't ring, okay? And I think that's probably one of the most powerful tools. I have mine right here, but we all have this with us at all times. Anything that you can push directly to a phone and track the open rates, you can then make an evaluation further down the line. Is this something I want to invest my money in again? And really create a more direct marketing plan depending on the event and depending on the demographic you're trying to get for the event.
What is ringless voicemail? That means they don't see it ring?
Correct. Yes, it literally drops a voice message right into their phone. The phone never rings. They open it up and say, hey, I have a voicemail. And all of a sudden they can check it.
Yeah, because we have call multiplier and it has the option of recording a message. And I did it once and I got hate because people are they're getting scammed with insurance, my extended car warranty. So that's the answer to that.
It's not the answer, but it's a suggestion, right? Because again, it comes down to the ease of disregard. Somebody will feel as though they're being bombarded if they can't simply move on from something. But to the point we've been making, those reminders are so incredibly important, especially the day of an event. I always suggest 2. I say the morning of and at least half an hour before for something virtual, at least.
Yeah.
Half an hour before might not be enough time for an in-person event because they have to travel and set that time up. But yes, if it can drop into their phone without it ringing, like you'll get some hate or some upset folks because they might be in the middle of something very important and their phone is ringing. And that triggers the annoyance response. But if it never rings and they can check it at their own leisure, chances are they're going to say, oh, okay, and just disregard it and move on. So,
okay. What is that, an app or a company?
There are many services. Again, I can put some on there for you, but drop.co is a good one. They're about 6 cents per drop. So it's all about how much you want to spend. There are services, they're about a penny a drop. I wouldn't suggest those. They tend to actually like do a very brief ring. So it'll ring once and then go to voicemail. So it is a service that you get what you pay for. But you could just Google voicemail marketing. There's tons of services up there.
Okay, thanks.
Every day there's new things to discover about ways to communicate with people. That marketing is, believe me, not just churches that are having to do that. A lot of people are figuring out ways to communicate with people, and it is annoying to be getting phone calls and things that from people you don't want to talk to. But I'm very good at pressing block and not, responding to those people, but looking at the ones that I want to look at. So I don't think that we can take offense. It's what they know we have to do this. We're doing this work for them. We're putting information out there about events and things that they may be interested in. How do we let them know if we don't communicate this way? So I think that you're fine, Doug, to continue to do what you're doing. Add the ringless voicemail. I don't have any issue with receiving those from you. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the costs of an event. So, what are the different costs? We've talked a little bit throughout about different things. The Constant Contact has a cost. All of the marketing things may have a cost. But when you create your budget, you want to look at the costs, and then you want to consider how you will cover these costs. And you mentioned, Doug, about, the churches are not that interested in fundraising. You need to be. You have to be. Because if you should be, at the very least, covering your cost if you can. You may not be interested in making a profit or trying to have extra, but you want to see if there's a way for you to recoup from people the cost that you're spending. And also, I think people value things when they pay for it, or they make a donation, or they contribute. I think they value it a little bit more. Our free events are not as well attended as our paid for events, interestingly enough. So you may want to consider turning a retreat into something that people pay a little bit for. Doesn't have to be a lot. It can be a donation at the door of whatever they choose to donate, and see if that covers your costs. So, if your motivation for having this event is to have it be a program event, and just your goal is just to bond and to get your members engaged, then you're not that concerned about fundraising, but you also want to try to cover your costs if you can. And I wanted to take just a quick break before we move forward. I'm going to come back to this same screen. So let's take, it's 11:02. Why don't we come back at 11:07 so that people can just take a minute to step away if they need to. And I apologize for not doing that sooner. Okay. Everyone?
Sounds good.
We give everyone a few minutes to return. Oops. I don't see everyone's video, so I can't really tell if everyone is back, but if you could, raise your hand or something, let us know you're back. We can go ahead and get started. I think I'm going to just start in a minute or so that those that did come back are ready. Hello, Walter. Let's see. So Veronica mentioned in the chat that there's multiple ways to contact people, that apartment buildings have, special events. They want to know about special events for their residents. So, there's a number of ways to contact people. So the how question, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but it's something you have to do to make your event successful. So I'm going to move on to continuing with costs. We talked about you may have food or catering at the event, decorations, musicians, guest speakers, sound, marketing, and so much more. Are you thinking about those things? Are you preparing for them? With food, are you preparing the food yourselves? Do the people who are preparing the food, are they certified food handlers? There is a permit that you can get for your church staff that are cooking. You really want to think about that. You don't want anybody to get sick from someone's food that's not stored properly. So you want to think about that when you're serving food. You can get them certified. If you have a caterer, is that caterer reliable, or are they on time? If they're late, do you have a plan B? Do you have snacks, appetizers, things like that? Those are things you might want to think about with food. Is it dinner time, the time that you're serving? Are you just serving snacks, but it's 6 o'clock and people were expecting dinner? There's a lot to be considered about food and what types of food and gluten-free food and, all types of questions. So think about all of that and then think about the costs of it. So these are the expenses that you have to consider for an event. Do you have people performing or a guest speaker? And how much have you agreed to pay them? Do you have their checks ready? At our jazz concerts every year, I had to have a number of checks for all the different musicians who performed, the guest artists, the sound people, the lighting people, and I almost always forgot someone. So I brought extra checks so that I could fill out a check for someone that day. So, you need to think ahead about, these people, the performers, what do they need, their travels. We had an event, a gala, where we paid 100 and something a person for everyone to eat. So I didn't want to pay for the musicians because I was paying for them as well. So I planned to have separate food for them that was less expensive and never really got around to it. And so they didn't have food, and you're not obligated to feed people that are working with you, but you would like to. So you want to take that into consideration. And fortunately, there was enough food in the event for the musicians to take part in. But you have to be thinking about all of that ahead of time. And for everything on this list, I could tell you an issue that we've had, or things that, we've had to work around, or things we've learned from. So, just be thinking about that. Do you have staff that need to be there? Are they going to be getting overtime? If you pay staff, you have to pay them over 8 hours or 40 hours. If they're hourly, you have to pay them overtime. Is your event in the evening? Is that work time for them? Or is that time that you're asking them to come in over and above? My staff, although I've said it when we started, that they may need to work evenings and weekends, each time it's as if I'm asking a favor. So, I have to make it clear to them that this is expected, that for when we have activities and events that are in weekends and evenings, that they have to work and be available and help with cleanup and setup and things like that. Do you need to rent equipment? Does the location have the equipment you need? Does the theater have sound already? If you're having a concert or something like that, do they have sound? Do they have people to run it, or do you have to pay them extra for it? Those are all things to consider. Do you need to rent equipment? Or do you have some at your church that you could take to the location or use at your church if you're having it there? If you're placing ads ahead of time, you need to schedule those. You know, when we had newspapers and things like that, if you wanted to place an ad in the LA Times, you didn't do it the day before. You needed to book that ad ahead of time. So now, you know, we don't have those types of resources like we did when I started Hands for Hope. We were doing a lot of newspaper ads. Now we're not doing that as much, but there's different things that you need to do, but all of it needs to be scheduled and the cost needs to be taken into consideration and put into your budget. So you order supplies. Do you have things that you need to have on hand? If you're having things printed to give out or hand out or postcards, then you need to have lead time to print those. You need to design them to get them to the printer. You need to, you know, pick them up, get them stamped for if they're mailing them, or if you're handing them out, make arrangements to figure out when you're handing them out at service or whenever. So if you're doing bulk mail, you also need lead time. And it takes us a week or two to do bulk mail because we have to create the labels to put on the documents that we're mailing. And sometimes the addresses are bad and they require you, when you have a bulk mail permit, to double check your addresses so that they don't bounce back, or they charge you if they bounce back. So you need lead time when you're doing your cost. You need to be thinking about all of this. So that 6-month window is when you have to take all of these things into consideration. Even decorations take time to think about, and flowers to order and decorate with, and balloons to blow up. And do you have one of those things that blows up balloons? And, you know, all of these things you have to take into consideration and put in as your costs. And we're going to show you a sample budget in a minute. Excuse me, next. I think we're on that screen, but it skipped it. Let's go back. You're seeing the income screen. I'm seeing this screen. Okay, this is the one that I want to see. So this is a sample screen that shows the budget, and it's kind of small. I don't know if you can see it well. I don't know if I can make it much larger without taking us out of the framework. Chris, can you tell me if you can see it?
Looks good.
Okay, so we have a larger version of this that I can show you as well, and maybe make it a little clearer. But basically what you're doing is planning for what an event might cost you in your budget. So this document has the income portion of the budget, and it's showing you our jazz concert and our walkathon, what we might make in sponsorships. It's just one portion of it. There's a whole nother section that shows tickets. And I think maybe I am going to try to share it with you. Let me just see if it's available. Stop share for 1 second. I think it would be good for you to see the document that I'm talking about that really outlines what your expenses might be. I don't know, you don't see my screen. Okay, I'm going to share again. So you're only seeing a portion of it, correct? So let's. Okay, so I can move things into the screen, I think, for you to see, but now that I have the whole document available for you, so you can see that we're looking at the total sponsorships for the events. And if I go down, let's see, you can see ticket sales is also something that you want to consider. Let me see if I can move up here. So you want to track how much your tickets, how many tickets you think you're going to sell. I don't know if everyone can see this, but it's a way for you to create a budget. And that's what I wanted you to be able to see. I can make it just a little larger. Sorry, Chris. If I take off the portion of the screen, you'll see it better. Going back might be an issue. So is that a little better, everyone?
Much better.
Okay. So this now shows you the types of things we take into consideration when we're going to create our budget for the year for our events. So we might say that the 2 events that we're having this year is a concert and a walkathon. And we actually had one yesterday, which is not included here. And then we have ticket sales that we have to take into consideration. Take off the freeze. So if we were to sell 75 tickets at $75 each at a VIP reception, we would make this much for the event. So going down, we see the income that we project to make for the event. And then we start looking at all the different types of costs. And I like using this budget because it puts things in here that I may not have thought of. Are you going to pass hors d'oeuvres? Are you going to have a dinner and buffet? Are you going to have bar, which, you know, we've had bars at our concerts and, you know, we need to stock that bar. You know, and because it's church events, you probably won't have a bar for liquor, but you might have a bar for drinks and things like that. And you could make some special drinks for the congregation. Design and decor, floral centerpieces, the band, the MCs, the musicians. If you're going to have an auction, our auction yesterday made $5,000–6,000. So you can have an auction at your event. And I know that churches don't do as much of this, but you may want to think about adding this, especially if your church is struggling financially. You know, if your church is not, then maybe you don't need to do these things. But if it is, that you might want to add some different activities that could bring in funds, just like any other nonprofit. The church is a nonprofit. So, you know, and then to consider all the costs that you might have, you know, for gas, for volunteers driving to pick up things, parking, you know, whatever costs there are, photography. We had a photographer for our event on Monday and she cost $325. We didn't have that in the budget, but we needed to do it. So I think just thinking about all of these things ahead of time, this sheet helps you to do that. So, you know, mailing, we talked about printed materials, publicity, marketing, rentals. There's costs for all of these things. And if they're not, it's what's called in-kind. There's a column here for in-kind budget, because if you didn't have to pay for it and someone else paid for it or donated it, then you want to track it as well, because next year you might have to pay for it. So you want to think about what it would cost this year. And if you don't have to pay for it, that's a bonus and a blessing, right? So you see all the different types of costs. If you could put in the chat any other kind of cost you thought of that you've had that we didn't think of here, that we don't have, signage, posters, you know, things that you want to put in the neighborhood, things like that. All of those types of costs you want to take into consideration and create a budget. I don't recommend doing an event without a budget, because then you will have to afterwards pay the price of having an event that cost you more than you could afford. So you want to try to have your budget ahead of time with all of your costs taken into consideration, all of your, let me see, your income that you think you're going to make, take that into consideration. And then your event can be more successful for you. So I'm just trying to bring our screen back up, our PowerPoint. Give me 1 second. And, you know, a gentleman like Chris, who is our guru for digital programming, you have to take that into consideration. That wasn't on that event budget, but it is a necessity to have someone who's familiar with the virtual, if you're planning to do a virtual event. So that's a cost that you might want to try to have as well. Almost there. Technology, see? This is something that you have to think about ahead of time. And I'm not the best at it, so I'm very happy to have Chris with us. Okay. So we have looked at the cost a little bit. Let's look at the income just a little bit more. There's many ways to raise funds at an event. You can have raffles, and nonprofits are supposed to get approval from the city to have a raffle. If you're not familiar with that, especially if it's a high cost raffle, or people are paying a lot for the raffle tickets and they're winning a high expensive prize. They may be winning a car. There's different types of giveaways. You want to make sure that you're doing what the law prescribes. They don't bother churches as much as they might bother a nonprofit, but it's still just something to think about. You can do auctions, you can do donations. As Chris mentioned, we've done events where we ask them for donations. We don't ask them for a ticket sales. And sometimes we do better doing that. Sometimes we don't, because there are people who will just come free and not think about making a donation. But if there's people who are okay with that, you sometimes can make more. You can have people who will make larger donations than what the ticket price was. So sponsorships is something that there are people in your congregation who work for different entities. Let's say you have someone who works at a car dealership. That car dealership is used to giving to local community events. They may be willing to sponsor your event. Churches, faith-based organizations have difficulty with this because some organizations will not give to religious organizations, but you may ask. All you can do is ask, all they can do is say no. And especially if you have church members that work at those places, you may be able to get some sponsorships for your events, depending on the type of events. If it's open to the public, they like that. It will help to promote them. So that's what sponsorships means, and you can possibly get that. Don't rule it out as a church. You may be able to get that as well. And you may be able to get church entities to sponsor your events. So you may want to reach out to ABCOFLASH or to ABCO USA, ABC USA, to see if they sponsor different things that you might be trying to do. They want to promote your churches. So you want to see if there's other options for you. Do you collect funds online or by check? Do you do credit cards? Do you do Square? Our church hesitated for many years to take Square at the door. And now that they do it, there's so much more income coming in from people who just want to flash their credit card at the door. If your church is not doing that yet, you're doing a disservice. We now do that and PayPal. So people can do it online if they're attending church virtually, or they can do it at Square when they're in person. And there's different ways to do it. It doesn't have to be Square or PayPal, but you can do different things to get funds to come in. So you want to broaden your reach for collecting funds from people. And
Lydia,
yes.
what is Square?
Square is very similar to PayPal. It's a device you can put on your phone and then open the app and slide people's credit cards and take credit cards from people. So Square, and I don't think you can use it like you use PayPal. PayPal is much more popular for buying things and things like that. But Square is very popular for retail.
Yes, I've seen it when I buy stuff at the fair, and yeah.
When I buy from a food truck, she has a Square thing. Just flash your credit card. So I think that it's something to consider, to have every option available to people. Take Zelle, take what people will give you, right? So that you can get funds in the way when you need it. Which one do you think would work for you? You know, think about which ones you want to use, right?
Lydia,
Yes.
is there such a thing as developing a QR code and they could just scan? I mean, would that be expensive to do?
Totally. I'm not familiar with doing it for funds. We do it for registration right now. We create QR codes and have people scan them to register for our events and things like that. If there's a cost involved, then you need a way to process payment. So I'm not familiar with QR codes that do that, but I'm sure they're out there.
I can help you with that.
Yes.
I'll drop a link right in the chat for you. QR codes are free to generate. You just put a link to wherever that payment's going to go. So for example, if you're using PayPal, they would scan the QR code and it would immediately direct them to your PayPal page. If you're using Square is another great example. It would direct them straight to Square.
Okay.
Stripe is another one that is very useful for collecting payments online and credit card processing. Again, Stripe accounts, free to set up. They charge a processing fee with each transaction. But yes, QR codes are a fantastic way to link to any online destination. So if you're trying to send them directly to a certain page, they can scan that QR code and it will automatically take them there.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Venmo is great when you're doing, I pay you for whatever, but is there a Venmo kind of thing for businesses? Because like, doesn't seem like ABCOFLASH can set up a Venmo. But
For businesses, the best recommendation I could make would be PayPal.
okay.
And
Yeah.
I use Zelle, which my bank has. It's a little bit more secure. I don't know Venmo and Cash App as well, but they're not associated with banks, which makes me a little nervous. So I use Zelle, which my bank does use. And a lot of banks are using that nowadays to make payments to people, to send money quickly and receive money quickly. I think that's one way. PayPal is another way, which is kind of secure, even more secure, because they kind of back you up on things. So
Yeah, the region has, an online pay registrations, all that, but sometimes if people already have Venmo, they can just stick it in but it's another step they have to.
Yeah, read the fine print on Venmo and Zelle and all of those, because there's some disclaimers that they give you about if you send to the wrong person, that person, they're not going to guarantee it. So you want to really read about these different processors that you're using, read their contracts and see what it is that they're saying that they will back up. Okay, and Chris put a QR code generator in the chat, so please take that, copy that so that you can use that at a later date to set up a QR code for yourself. Okay.
And Pastor Talib, real quick to your last point, Venmo did recently open up a Venmo for Business, and they do, to the other point, have an automatic QR code generator, right? So they can scan that QR code and it will go directly to your Venmo account. Additionally, Stripe has additional perks for nonprofits. I'll put that link in the chat for you as well. So like they won't collect any fees until you reach X amount of dollars. So those are both great resources. I'll put both of those in the chat for you.
Thank you, Chris. So isn't he great? So, so you can do auctions, you can do all kinds of things to raise funds at your church. We recently did a campaign where we asked everyone to donate $95 because our church is 95 years old. So everyone in the church took that really seriously and got their friends to donate to the church. So there's all types of things you can do to raise income, not just through events. And so, or you can make an event associated with that. At your anniversary event, ask for people to donate $1 for every year. They will do it. People will do it. And you want it to not interfere with their tithing, but you do want them to know that it's over and above and that you appreciate anything extra that they can do. And, we did an auction. I just want to tell you a little story about our auction we did last year at our jazz concert. We were going to auction a puppy. Now, there are so many people, animal activists, who feel very strongly that that's the wrong thing to do. And so we had one of our donors who really had issue with that and said, that's horrible. You shouldn't do that. You need to know where the puppy is going. You need to know that the puppy's going to a good home. So we did an offline auction and sold the puppy basically to someone that we vetted first. And we made $3,000 on that puppy. So, it's not all about the money for churches. I understand that. But if churches are struggling and need money, why not consider some different options you may have? And that's all I'm trying to say with our fundraising efforts today. So I'm going to skip ahead to another poll. Have you had successful events? Do you think your events were successful? Answer this poll, and then we're going to talk about why. And if you think they were not successful, we're going to talk about why not. And while you guys are answering the poll, Chris and I, we had yesterday's event. There were so many moving parts to our event, right? To create this successful event. We had so many things happening, live demos, food demos. We had videos that we had to drop in at the right time. We had a video with music. Could they hear the music? There's all different questions to answer. So you want to think about all that. And, how much did we need to raise to make it, consider it successful? What we raised was great. It was more than I thought we might do, but it wasn't what we put in the budget that we would raise. So you want to think about that. How are we meeting the rest of what we budgeted for that event? And we have to make up for that in other areas in our organization, maybe get a different grant or something like that. So we didn't meet our goal for their funds. Should we do this event again? Yes, because it was successful in that it did raise quite a bit. It's just whether or not maybe we project differently next time. Maybe in the income section of our budget, we do it a little bit differently. So let's see. Some people have had successful events. About half of you have had really successful events, and 25% of you made a profit, which really isn't your first goal anyway. And then, you got some new church members from it, which is a real priority for churches nowadays. Some of you did all of that, which is great. And those of you that did other, please share with us what it is. And we're going to end this poll and let everybody, no, let's give a few more seconds because only 5 of you answered it. Maybe if a couple more answer, we'll get a better sense of what successful looks like out there. So if you don't think your events were successful, then you're in the other category, I think. So we're just trying to determine of you, which of you think that your events were successful. So maybe some of you didn't have events because no one else is answering. So we'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results. And so you can see that, it's pretty, let's see, there's room for improvement. Let's put it that way. Okay. So even though some of you had great attendance and great events, you might want to do some of the things we mentioned to make your events even more successful. Or you might want to think of different types of events. And, we have a tendency to continue to do something, even if it's not successful. So if we have an event that we have every year and people are expecting it, we do it and have no one show up. One of the horror stories at our church that I feel really terrible about is that we have a great drama ministry, and he did a play one year where no one attended. And, I think that was unacceptable, that everyone needed to participate. I don't know what caused that, but we need to be certain that it's going to be successful before you start it, before you, even put in the work to make the event happen. You have to kind of know that it's going to be successful. So thank you. We can stop sharing that poll result.
Lydia?
Yes.
We've done a Magic Mountain Day over several years. So I was wondering, do we go ahead and have this? So I did a quick 3-day survey. Are you interested? Which dates work? How many people do you estimate will come? Because one of my issues is minimums, because Magic Mountain says if you have a group, you have to have 100 people. You sign a contract, but I had enough of a positive response to feel confident that I can go ahead and put that event together. So we're going to do that. And I think we'll be fine reaching our minimum. But doing the survey ahead, asking people, will you come to this? Is this something you are interested in?
Like I said, Doug, that's great. You have to know ahead of time. You can't just take a chance that it might be successful, or wait till the last minute for registration and then no one shows up. You kind of got to be doing some proactive things to find out if it's going to be successful. I did a poll with the kids at my program. Do you want to go to Magic Mountain? And I was shocked that they don't really care about it anymore. I was going to add our kids to your program. I thought that they would like to go. So I don't know what appeals to teenagers these days. I'm far from a teenager. So, I have to ask them. And, I think sometimes it's just a mood they're in. It's not even that, they don't like it. If they went, they'd probably have a great time. But, I have to go by what they're telling me. that they're not interested in going. And I think they're kind of inundated with Magic Mountain and Universal and things like that. Every kid that I know has done that because they're teenagers. They've done it in their lifetime. So, what would appeal to them now? I have to think about that. What different things can we do? And so Magic Mountain, if it's working and you have your minimum attendance, that's great. Keep that going. But for the kids who don't go, or the churches that are not participating, maybe you add another event that kids might like, to see if there's a way to engage, especially since we're really trying to engage youth in our churches. Let's do more youth activities. That's just one. Maybe we do others. It's a great one. But if they're all not attending, or if we're not getting participation from 50% of our churches, maybe we want to think about one that will. So that's just my 2 cents. We can take the results down, Chris. And the next thing I want to talk about, it says, it says thank you. And I'm seeing the results though still, Chris. Shall I close it, or can I?
Yeah, you'll have to close it on your own screen.
Okay, great. So thanking people. So this is not saying thank you to you that are on the call. I'll do that later. This is saying thank you to the people that participate. Each and every person who spends time helping to achieve the goals of the event should be thanked, given certificates, awards, appreciated. They don't have to do it. The volunteers don't have to do it, and they won't do it again if they don't feel like their contribution was appreciated. So if you're not doing that in the nonprofit community, they say thank you 7 times. You can announce it in church. You can send a letter. You can send an award. You can mention their name in different, circles. Like I'm going to mention right now, thank you to Mike Woodcock and Veronica Akhtar for making all of Hands for Hope event successful, for attending, for volunteering, for being a part of them. Thank you. We could not have done it without you. I'm taking this opportunity to thank them. Okay, so I think that every one of you, if you're not doing that, really think about that. A letter takes a minute, right? Or a mention takes a minute. Mention, try to think of you. Maybe you won't do it 7 times, but how many times did you thank the people who made your events a success? I just really want to make sure that that's clear, that if you do not thank people, they won't do it again, and you need them to do it again. You need them to be excited about doing it again because they feel so loved and appreciated for participating and for helping you, even right down to helping you come up with the budget and figuring out what the costs are going to be and what the income's going to be. And maybe you have each of them managing a section and you thank them for managing that section. Thank you, Veronica, for doing decoration for years, for doing the auction for years, for writing grants for years. Thank you, Mike, for being on the board, for being a part of every event and supporting by attending every event. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you, ABCOFLASH, for all you do for me and Hands for Hope and our church and the community of churches we serve. So basically that's it. I like to end on that note. And I want to know if there's more questions. Thank you, those that are asking questions. I really appreciate that. It shows that you're engaged and really understanding what we're communicating. So let me know if there's any other questions that I can answer or Chris can answer. He's been great today. Got any in the chat? So some events have been good. Some events haven't been that great. And yeah, I think we've answered pretty much the ones that are in the chat. Anyone want to unmute and tell us about one of their events?
We have an ongoing one. I think a lot of churches do. We do Operation Christmas Child, and we just work on it every Wednesday. And whoever can come and help, it's packing shoe boxes and sending them to third world countries through Samaritan's Purse, which is run by Franklin Graham. So that's like an ongoing event. And it brings out people that, maybe they're retired or, they just don't have a lot to do. So they kind of look forward to getting together on Wednesdays and work. And then we also have every once in a while, we'll have an evening packing party for those who work, but who still want to pack shoe boxes. So that's been pretty successful.
I consider that a program activity more so than an event.
Yeah.
Activity that engages members, that members take part in. They feel like they're giving, they're contributing, they're helping, they're volunteering.
Yeah, okay.
That's great. And you want to thank them just like you
Oh,
would.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, you want to thank them. You want to really make a point of thanking them publicly whenever you can. And if you have an opportunity, and you know, an award now and then for people like that who've done it for years is a good idea. So yeah, that would be great to thank them. I wanted to show you our event that we just did this Monday, which was not an event to raise money, which is the type that you may be doing. So Chris, if you have that lined up, that video, perhaps you can do that. I'm going to stop share so you can share. I'll just keep holding on. I'll just keep.
We really wanted to provide a space for you today where you could really feel special, have time to mingle with one another, because you're what makes this community here at Hands for Hope. You're our parents, you are, the people that we want to serve and acknowledge today. So I hope you felt a little bit of that today. Beignet Box, who has provided dessert for us today. And El Pollo Loco, who's provided dinner. And they've also provided a little special gift for you that we will be giving to you at the end of the day. And we also want to thank Misty and her team of hairstylists and makeup artists. We're going to be showing you a little surprise that the kids put together for you, okay?
Hi, my name is Jackson Floyd, and I love my mother because she feeds me, clothes me, and gives me a place to sleep, and she loves me unconditionally. I chose the tulip because the tulip stands for true love, and my mother has true love for me. Happy Mother's Day.
Hi, my name is Leo. Things that I love about my mom It's hard to say because there's like many things I love about her. She's so passionate and full of wisdom and elegant. Anyways, I love my mom for everything she does, no matter what she does. And she reminds me of an orchid because she's so elegant and organized. Anyways, I love you and happy Mother's Day.
Hi, my name is Gabriel. I love my mom because she supports me in everything that I do. And I chose a carnation because it represents friendship and my mom's my best friend. Happy Mother's Day.
So I hope that that wasn't too time consuming for you. It gives you a sense of an event that Hands for Hope is doing and an event that you could do for the parents and film it yourself like that and record it so that you have it for posterity or to show what you're doing for your congregation. And I think that we have learned some things about that event, you know, that we could do differently. You know, you want to have, I had a photographer and a videographer to make sure that the parents got photos to take home. Our goal was to pamper the parents, the single mothers in the community, and we did that. So I think that it was really special and that the kids really showed their parents, that their mothers, that they love them for Mother's Day. So, you know, I think I want to end on that note and just say happy Mother's Day to everyone. I think that some of us have mothers that are still with us and some have mothers that are gone on, but, you know, enjoy them while they're here and remember the great times when they're gone. And I hope this was helpful to everyone. If there's any questions, feel free to ask. Chris, if you could put my contact information on the screen, it's the last screen of the PowerPoint, as opposed to me doing it right now and trying to get it back up and running.
Yeah,
But,
just 1 second.
Thank you. So yeah, I hope that anyone, if you have events that you'd like to tell us anything about, we have a few more minutes. If you'd like to share any other events, thank you, Sharon, for sharing yours. Anyone else want to share? Again, the workshops that we've done are available to you from ABCOFLASH, so you can look at some of the previous workshops. I hope this one was helpful. And this is my contact information. Should you need any further help in any of these areas, you can contact me or contact ABCOFLASH and they'll contact me to come out to your church and help you. So we have one last one coming up next month, the first Saturday. And thank you all for attending today. And thank you, Chris, for your help, and Debbie, and Andy Kent for allowing this, and Doug for promoting it. Good job.